Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Bucket Bros, or AKA Two Tired Dads. Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Bobby. How are you? You are joining me, Ronnie West. For those audio listeners, I have to try to remember that. You podcast, our audio audience is definitely excellent, so I want to make sure we appreciate them. Bobby, how you doing?
I mean, I think you said it already. I'm just trying to keep my eyes open right now. So if they close, my lips might still be moving. I tend to go into these
Yeah.
autopilots where I just still talk about basketball even if I'm asleep.
No, I feel the same. I feel like I keep falling asleep watching it. Like I told you, I'm watching it at breakfast. Um, so yeah, it's one of those things. It's fun. It's the end of the season. There's lots of big important games. There's some surprising games that have a twist that we're not sure what's going to happen. But yeah, it's a good time of year to be watching some basketball. Uh, but yeah, so let's jump into it. I think the first one we kind of have to touch on just because it's the big story of the last 24 hours. Uh, and I will bring it up here. Is Mr. Luka Doncic back in Dallas? Had an emotional tribute before the game, and then went off and he himself had a spectacular game. Also, AD going against his team. What were your kind of takeaways and thoughts from the game last night?
Well, I mean, it was kind of cool to see, Luca really get into his feels at the beginning of the game there. I mean, you could tell that there's still some connection there with him and the fans. I mean, obviously from the fan side, you can tell because they're begging to fire their GM, at a home game. What was it? Only a couple minutes in, but to see Luca react, the same way is pretty cool. And I mean, as you're displaying the graphics there, that it's not like relationships are lost here. It was not a breakup that he was hoping for, and not even a breakup that a lot of the folks in the Mavericks organization was hoping for. So it's probably kind of weird going back, if anything. But yeah, I mean, he was clearly riding those emotions as he just whooped his old team handily there.
Yeah,
And,
went off.
the
He used that
Lakers, yeah,
emotional tribute and kind of it lit a fire watching I think it was like the first quarter highlights, like, or the interview of JJ Redick of like, how did he use this emotion he used it for good. He had 31 points in the first half, ended with 45. Yeah, just kind of went off, kind of just to like, this is what you're losing. LeBron had 27. AD had a good game going against his old team. But yeah, that was definitely an emotional, like you said, just going on beforehand. Like it was definitely an emotional game for him and definitely for that city, as we will talk to some Dallas fans in the future of just kind of what he means to them. Because yeah, like you said, they were cheering for an opposing team, calling to fire their GM. It was just kind of a nuts, bizarro game uh, while I was watching that one here earlier.
yeah. He had like 31 in the first half. I don't know if I got that exact number, but it started with a three. It
Yep.
was, yeah, definitely a big game. And I mean, from just a pure basketball standpoint, it's not like we should be too surprised. The Lakers obviously were the favorites going into that game, and it was important game for them for playoff implications. They by by winning that game, they've now clinched a playoff spot. They no longer have to worry about the play-in. They are, currently sitting at the third seed? Yep. They're currently sitting somewhat comfortably at the third seed, a game above Denver with two left. And I mean, I think there's a pretty good chance that they're gonna stay right there. Even if they lose one or two of their games to close the season, they just have like all the tiebreakers on everybody who threatens their spot, so they really don't have to worry about it thereafter. So yeah, the Lakers have found themselves out of that play-in race, which I'm sure is nice for them. Um, but yeah, I mean they the first time they matched up against OKC, I honestly felt like OKC was just sort of setting into their ways of being the first seed and just kind of trying to keep guys minutes down. Um, but yeah, they clearly did not want to get smacked by the Lakers twice. Um, Shea had a big game in the game against OKC preceding the Mavs game, but yeah, it didn't matter for the Lakers after all after their convincing win against the Mavs.
I feel like I kept hearing the announcer say J Dubs, whether with a rebound or getting a shot off. So I feel like he had a big game in that one. So yeah, they didn't get swept by the Lakers. So, but yeah, there was it 18 games above 500 at 49-31, right? As this moment of 10:05 Central Time, the Lakers sit at number 3. And sorry, no, I was just going to say I thought they were on like a bit of at least some of the teams on a hot streak. I at least now seeing Denver in green versus all of their red. But we can kind of turn to Denver unless you had any other comments on the Lakers.
No. I mean, some of the stuff that we were hoping to get into following our last episode is kind of already set in stone. I mean, the Lakers' position in the standings obviously not set yet, but yeah, it's still a little bit of turmoil in the West there. A little bit of a lot of bows being thrown in that play-in mix there. But yeah, I mean, after that. Oh, some of the teams that we were talking about, one of the big things for a lot of these squads in this final stretch here is they at least have some cupcake games. As we're talking, there's a big game right now against Minnesota and Memphis. There isn't really too many of those to close the season, and so it was really important for all the teams that we're talking about out west in play-in consideration to really win the more winnable games. And over the past couple of days, essentially everybody has done that except the Warriors, who fell to San Antonio yesterday in a very disappointing loss. They were coming off a back-to-back, and it was a little bit of a back and forth in the first half. The Warriors then gave themselves a nice lead. They were up by 14 just seconds before the close of the third, and then the Spurs hit a couple big shots. But I mean, really, it was just a combination of factors that led to the Spurs winning that game. It was kind of an onslaught by some of the younger guys. I mean, if it wasn't Stephon Castle getting down near the rim, but putting on that rim pressure, it was Champagnie or even Keldon Johnson. Both of those guys really helped close that game super well. And then just in general, they had a lot of shooting luck to go with it. It was like Stephon Castle hit his only 3 after missing his first 5, hit his only 3 in the fourth quarter to tie the game 99-99. And then ultimately that led to Harrison Barnes, who seemingly couldn't miss a shot, including the very last one of the game. Nothing but net over his old squad to seal it for them. And they got to celebrate, everybody jumping around while the Warriors walked off with their tails between their legs. And yeah, that was a really big loss for them. So now they're sitting at 7th, a half game behind, Memphis, who, as we said, is currently playing Minnesota. And to say that, the Warriors' chances of getting in the playoffs are over, but yeah, now they might have to claw their way out of this one. Tough stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you had mentioned it. I think you kind of danced around it. Castle with 21 in that game. And the Warriors, at least like when you look at the box score, Steph has 38 and 3, Jimmy has 28, 4 and 7. So it's like they showed up. But once again, I think it's like I feel like we've beaten this horse over and over again. It's like, who else is going to step up? Like, we can't, there's no consistent secondary scorers that are coming up aside from Jimmy when he's there, and like you mentioned before, a lot of his stuff is in interiors. So I am getting more and more worried about the Warriors. It's a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing when I've been watching, when they've had to kind of step up the bench role, or just kind of, like you said, when Steph is off the court, they're making a lot of bad decisions. And so it just seems like there's been, I made a note that there's been more and more turnovers. And so, yeah, I if I was doing my power rankings again, my Warriors would be falling, just because of kind of their overall play has just, it's got a lot more holes, or the holes have kind of gotten bigger, of the things that I'd be worried about.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just use this last game as an example, like I said, they had as much as a 14-point lead at the end of the third, and they, and then that dwindled down to a tie game about halfway through the fourth. And so, a lot of that is time that Steph was off the floor. I'm not saying that they were winning necessarily the minutes when he did come back on, because again, the Spurs had like a lot of things going right for them in that time frame, but yeah, not. I'm sure it's it's not what you want to see as a fan, and not the momentum that the Warriors were hoping for at this point. They do have 2 more games left.
Granted, they lost on a amazing last second shot. Like, otherwise, this game was going to overtime. So that's like, I shouldn't be sitting here nitpicking as maybe as bad. Like, this is terrible. Like, if they had a little bit higher hand, like, it might have been a different story, but that was kind of an unbelievable shot. But yeah, like you said, it's not the way that they want to go into the playoffs, kind of tumbling backwards. So
Yeah, and that said, they're going to be playing the Trailblazers next, who just like anybody else, I really can't figure them out this year. I don't know if they're going to start everybody. I wouldn't be surprised if they're kind of just cashing out their chips at this point. But generally the Blazers, the second half of the season, have not been an easy team. So we'll see how much effort they put into it, and then after that, then they have to face the Clippers, who will probably still have something to be fighting for at that time too. Potentially securing a lead over the Warriors to stay out of the play-in spot. So yeah, not necessarily the easiest 1-2 games that they have left to close the season there.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've got anything else, we can kind of jump to the next big story that happened over the last week. And like you mentioned a little bit earlier, there were some things that we were starting to notice, at least with Denver, about kind of falling on this. They kind of went on a 4-game losing streak. And I want to say within less than 24 hours after our last episode recorded, the Denver Nuggets fired their head coach, Mike Malone. And so, and I don't even, this is my own fault, I don't have the name of the new head coach, their assistant that kind of is stepping in. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Nuggets letting him go? Sorry for the airplane behind me.
So that's all right. It is upsetting that both Mike Malone's tenure and president of basketball operations Calvin Booth's tenure came down to this. Essentially, it was like 2 siblings fighting, hoping that the other one would win, and they both lost at the same time. I don't think that was necessarily a bad move by the Nuggets organization. It was just the timing of it was awful. And then, you have to wonder if between Malone and Booth, if they were just so caught up in their own ways, and maybe perhaps too prideful, that, I mean, in essentially they were both in a way sort of, not, I don't want to say destroying, but but they didn't have like the Nuggets' best intentions in mind, and that is maximizing Nikola Jokic's prime. So it's kind of sad that you almost see some of those. I mean, even if it's a season or two, some of that time dwindle, because you know that, for any team in, and for any team in any sport, especially in the NBA, your chance to be on the mountaintop could be super short lived. Anything could happen, and so to hear things that like Michael Malone was purposely not playing, certain players that Booth had acquired, just for like petty reasons, just to like prove a point. You could see how stuff like that would get him to lose the locker room. And what you hear is just in general, something like playing on a team with Nikola Jokic, which is supposed to be really fun, was starting to become a drag. And so I think some of that emotion was starting to display itself in the games that they've had recently, particularly since the All-Star break, which time they've had a losing record, not by much, but they've had a losing record since the All-Star break, which is, that's odd for a team like this.
Yeah, no, we'll see. They're 4-6 in our last 10, so we'll see if they can kind of turn that around going into the playoffs. I think at least in whether it was today's game or yesterday, when it's one of those, it brings I don't want to say the possibility, because that diminishes the current head coach and the work that he's done. But
David Edelman, by the way, David Edelman.
Thank you. Could Jokic be a player coach? He was sitting there with the whiteboard at one of the games. Does he seem like somebody that would? I don't think he's going to be scheming and doing all of the research and everything that coaches are usually doing as far as like game planning for the next opponent. But it had an unusual feel of like, hey, maybe this could be something that could work for the rest of the season, kind of like that, where he's doing his own thing, kind of dictating what's going to work best for him, if that's going to be something that kind of opens things up. Like you're saying, if they were not having fun playing with him just because of the style of play that Malone was putting on them, that if Jokic is able to be more free, is that going to be able to do more for this Nuggets team? Is that something that you could possibly see happening, or is this they're going to fall on their face kind of deal just because they aren't going to have like a direction and cohesion going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, scheme obviously does matter, and I don't know how much that's going to change too much, in the last couple games going into the playoffs here. I'm pretty sure the game plan is still going to be give the ball to Jokic and everybody else run around and try to do something. But I mean, since they've had the coaching change, they did win, a must-win game against the Kings, and that's ahead of a big game that they have coming up tomorrow against the Grizzlies, the poor Memphis Grizzlies, to before they close their season against the Rockets. The latter of which I think is actually going to be the easier game, because I'm pretty sure the Rockets at this point are just about shutting down. They've secured their spot. They're the second seed going into the playoffs. They don't need to. I mean, they started Reed Shepherd yesterday. Is that right?
Yeah, I was going to say that was one thing that we were going to hit on now, was like a lot of these teams, it's at least this week, it's been surprising thinking that a team was going to be competitive. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, that's that G Leaguer that I saw. That's the G League MVP playing for the Celtics right now. And like their whole team it's Peyton Pritchard was the only guy that I recognized on the team playing against the Magic. And yeah, the Rockets did the same thing against the Clippers. Like once these teams have kind of locked in, it makes, obviously, if you're a fan, you want to see these guys play. But at the end of the season and watching the Bulls, and they've got half of the G League players that I was watching on their bench now, that I think the roster's opened up. They're able to kind of give these guys some experience, especially these playoff guys. If they're going to get probably 4 minutes in the playoffs over the span of 10 or 12 games for some of these teams that are going to go deep, like being able to use some of these bench minutes in these kind of last few games makes sense. You want these guys to at least get in, have the feel of the ball in a game like recently if they have to be in a particular spot going into the playoffs. So I think those things have their advantage. But yeah, obviously for seedings, how is that affected? Like you've been mentioning, it seems like the East and the West are kind of already settled. Are there like maybe 3 spots on each side that aren't fully kind of confirmed now in the East and the West? Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Well, 4 through 8 out west is still
Okay.
fairly wide open. I mean, a lot can happen in the last 2 games here in those spots. Because I mean, the Denver Clippers, Grizzlies, Warriors, and Minnesota have still none of them have clinched a playoff spot. They're all going to be either playoffs or play in, but we don't know where they're going to land just yet. As we're talking, I believe Minnesota has created a pretty good
14-point lead going in. Edwards has 38 points. Randall has 24. So yeah, it's 105-91. Minnesota beating up poor.
Okay, but we still got a whole quarter left, but still a pretty convincing lead there. And as I mentioned, Memphis then still has to play the Nuggets. So I could very much see Memphis sliding into 8th here. I mean, that's the lowest that they'll end up. So I mean, they're gonna get a 1-game play-in chance potentially already. But yeah, I don't know that if I had to pick against anybody right now, it would be the Grizzlies, even though they're in the 6th seed as we're talking. But where does that ultimately put Minnesota, Golden State, and the Clippers? I think that last game against the Clippers between Golden State is going to decide a lot, but we'll see. And yeah, I would say yeah, things are still pretty messy out west. And then you mentioned going out east. That is a little less interesting. We sort of I think I really downplayed it last time. I think I downplayed it a little bit too much last time we talked. Maybe I was a little bit too cruel. I would say, one thing that is interesting, Orlando did secure the 7th seed, so that's not going to change in terms of play-in seeding. But Atlanta, I believe, could still slide into 9th, which is that's some dangerous territory. And in which case, the Bulls would be the 8th seed, and that's assuming that Atlanta loses out and the Bulls win out for the last 2 games. Because if they end up with a tied record, I'm pretty sure Atlanta has the tiebreaker over the Bulls. And then one thing I thought was for sure going to happen was Detroit was going to slide their way up into 5th, but Giannis said no. He wanted nothing to do with that, and it's still possible for Detroit to steal the 5th seed from Milwaukee. They would have to win both of those games against Milwaukee to close the season, though, which is kind of an interesting way that's going to play out. I wish that would happen more often, but it's kind of like a mini playoffs before the playoffs. It's almost like a mini play-in before the playoffs between those 2 squads.
Not that offhand, but it's at least they do it in the NFL. Like the last week, sometimes 2 weeks, you're playing your own division. Like, is that something that the NBA has incorporated, that maybe the last game or 2 you're playing your divisional opponents to make it more relevant and more of a reason to play, because it does affect seeding or however that ends up? I don't know how important the divisions are in the NBA, because I don't hear anybody talking about like they've clinched their division, so that's what's gotten them into the playoffs, since there's 5 other teams that
now you got me curious. I don't know, actually. I don't know the answer to that. I do apologize, folks. I mean, just looking over the games, you see sort of like of what's left. Yeah, throw it away. Everything's changing too fast. I can't keep up. I mean, based on what I'm looking at, it does seem that there is perhaps a higher concentration of interconference games, but it's not like across the board. So that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I do apologize.
No, is
Um,
that something that you just made it seem like it was something that sounded intriguing to you? Does that seem like something that the NBA should incorporate? Does that make sense that you should be facing your divisional opponents towards the end of the season to make it matter? Whether it's, like you said, division or interconference opponents, rather than having maybe a Western conference, like an Eastern Conference team is playing the Jazz in the last game of the season or
yeah.
something.
Absolutely. So yes, absolutely, it could matter, and it really just depends on one, how good your division is, and if your division has a lot of other playoff teams, especially playoff teams that have similar records to your squad. Because ultimately, how tiebreakers are going to work is head-to-head record, and then it's division winner followed by division record. So obviously, your division winner is going to have the tiebreaker over everybody else in the division, but then division record matters before conference record. So yes,
Okay.
so interdivisional games do matter, but I mean, you can always, with that, you kind of like always run the risk of, and then this is me trying to remember the divisions off the top of my head, which is something I just, because it matters so little these days, I really haven't thought about it that much. But um,
You've got
if
the Atlantic, Central, Southeast, and then the Northwest, Pacific, and Southwest.
Yeah.
Unless you were
Well, so
talking
then
about,
what you'll end up seeing though is the scheduling, the super scheduling minds of the NBA will say, "Ooh, we're gonna pin a game of the Knicks against the Sixers to close the season." We could see that being a big one that decides seeding, whether playing or not, and then you get just an absolute outlier of a season like this from the Sixers, and then it just ends up being a cupcake game for the Knicks, or a Knicks team such in this year, for example, it could be a Knicks team that has already sealed their seeding and doesn't play anybody, that doesn't play any of their starters, and is also playing a tanking team. So just like a double, basically a G League game. What you would get is a G League game out of it, and you're gonna get a lot of those. But anyway, so I don't know. You got to be careful, but yeah, no, it would matter. Ultimately, to answer your question, it took me a long time to answer your question, but yes, it would matter.
that's okay. Uh, any other? I think we've hit on the Warriors and Spurs. The Clippers, I think you had done like a feature spot on them after beating the Rockets, like we mentioned. Um, any other random Western Conference thoughts before I force us to talk about the East after some howling? Or I can just start doing some howling.
Mm. I. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. There is for those who cannot see, there is a 3D printed Timberwolf, a very well 3D printed Timberwolf making its way on the screen. Yeah, it looks it looks a lot more threatening when it's close to the camera. You zoom out and you realize that it fits in the palm of your hand, and it's more of a puppy than a Timberwolf.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah.
yeah,
So
no, I
the
mean,
Wolves.
go ahead.
They lost to the Bucks the other night, and at least kind of the takeaways that I noticed was that there was a lot of bad turnovers. I think it's just when I was watching that fourth quarter and it just kind of fumbled away. They built up a 24-point lead, and then it all fizzled away. I think it was ended up being a 37-3 Bucks run in the fourth. To kind of, and they just got cold. There was no highlights. If I'm watching like the condensed game, it was just Bucks, like at the end of the game, and there was no Timberwolf highlights. And I was like, what's happening? It's just missed 3-pointer or whatever it might have been. But yeah, so the Timberwolves currently are Yeah, they're up pretty big. It looks like 22 points going into the fourth quarter with just under 120 points when usually it's hard for them to get 100 points by the end of the third. So they are having an explosion tonight. Like I mentioned,
you mean by the end of the fourth?
No, by the end of they've had some issues with that, but usually by the third they're sniffing 100 points. But Anthony Edwards doesn't usually have 44 points as well. Like I mentioned, Julius Randle with 24. So they're, and I'm just hoping that they land in that 6 seed so I can tie it into a clip from like 5 months ago of me saying that I hope they just get the 6 seed, and that's kind of where they've ended up. So I think if they get this win, I don't know how their tiebreaker ends up with the Warriors, because I think that's who they'd be tied with currently. I don't know if that would put them above or below them. So I'm not getting too much heartburn because it's kind of what I've expected. It's disappointing to give up a big lead, but it's to a good team. This is a game I'm glad to see that they're beating the Grizzlies. And then their last game against the Jazz, I would expect them to win. I think it would be a bit of a worry unless they're going to take it for position, but where they're kind of situated, I would think that they would try to get the 6 seed versus even dealing with the play-in. So I'm hopeful. I think there's at least a decent chance because they're going to be playing a woeful Jazz team next after getting this win. So, yeah, I think
Jazz and the Nets, right?
Yes,
I think that's how they close the season. So
yeah, both.
Yeah,
I'm
glad you brought up that Bucks game. I can't believe that one slipped my mind. But yeah, that was a disaster fourth quarter for the T-Wolves. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. There was a lot of like just hot shooting from the Bucks. It feels like they couldn't miss transition three after transition three, but a lot of those were coming off of steals. I noticed that the Bucks, they went into this pseudo zone around the ball handler at the point of attack and just essentially said, "We'll let you shoot, but we're going to shut down all passing lanes." And yeah, I mean,
they didn't know what to
do. It was just possession after possession. Yeah, they didn't know what to do with it. They just kept throwing it right into the hands of the opposition, and Bob's your uncle, and that was the end result. So that was a super disappointing loss for the T-Wolves, who could have, especially after this game, could have had quite a bit more momentum going into the end of the season. So, I still like their chances. They're just such a fighting team. They really are. Especially the way that they've clawed themselves back in the second half of the season. Mirroring that of the Warriors, but doing so without any big trades. They were doing it from within with their same lineup.
Well, they had their big trade at the beginning of the season. So it was just trying to get that funk of of mixing up the players. So I was glad they didn't make any big moves to change up the chemistry. It was, let's get everybody healthy. So that was at least positive from a fan standpoint versus kind of let's get to the off season and then decide if we're going to throw everything around when there's still a decent shot at a good season and a good playoff run.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, in my preliminary research, Golden State does have the tiebreaker over Minnesota. I think they won the series 3-1 on the season.
All right.
Yeah, that could be your play-in matchup though.
Yeah.
Whose odds do you like better in that play-in matchup? Minnesota versus Golden State.
I don't. Yeah, after everything I just said about the Warriors, and I feel like I would lean towards the Timberwolves, and it's something that I was thinking earlier, and it was from when I saw that the Magic clinched that number 7 seed and were the home team in the play-in. I would almost want to be the road team in that 7-8 matchup because I feel like I would have to go back and look at the last few years, but I always feel like if you're the home team, it's just there's so much more pressure. You're worrying about tickets, it's the playoff, like there's just so much more hoopla that you're worried about versus being the road team when you're at the hotel, there's no family to bother you, like you can just be focused on the game. And it's like I'm not a better, but it's like I almost feel like I would have to hedge some sort of bet on like that road team. So if it's Wolves Warriors, in my head I'm thinking I feel on a neutral site it would be the Wolves, but I think it's whichever team is on the road, I think is going to be the one that wins. So that's at least my gut feeling going into this right now, and we can cut this up whenever I screw up and make the mistake on that. So that's just kind of my feeling going into that, and it works for the East or the West. To me, it's just I think in that 7-8 matchup, I think the 8 seed has a much freer. You're playing with more house money, less to lose than that home team.
Gotcha. And what's interesting though is that the T-Wolves have not played the Jimmy Butler Warriors this year. So if they did match up, that would be the first time they would play this rendition of the Warriors this season. That's
Good
always
thing we
fun.
don't have Cat on the team anymore. So it's a whole. I don't think there's anybody from that Jeff Teague D Rose lineup that he went after. So I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Edwards might have actually been on the Butler team.
That would have been nuts. That would have been nuts. I don't know. That'd be a hell of a defensive backcourt.
Well, they said it was a bunch of the G Leaguers, so I'm just saying I don't know when. If we were to do the math of when Ant was actually on the team versus when Jimmy was taking these, because I think it was 2016, so I'm pretty sure that was before Edwards, or 2018. So I can't remember my math on when that Rachel Nichols interview was.
Well, one more thing I wanted to mention was going back out east. I did forget to mention that there is the potential for Indiana and New York to flop spots at the 3 and 4. The Knicks are currently on a little bit of a slide. They lost the last two, and that is before going in to face the Cavs again tomorrow, which and that's also after losing recently before this most recent Pistons game that they fell that they lost tonight when they fell to the Celtics the other night. That in a very hard fought game, mind you, two squads that had that both the Celtics and the Knicks had essentially their full roster, and it was a very hard fought game. Ended up going into overtime. Ended up being a huge shot to win the game by Tatum. So it was definitely the best performance that the Knicks have had against the Celtics this year, because the previous ones, if I'm not mistaken, have all been essentially blowouts. But that does make the Knicks 0-9 against the top 3 squads in the NBA, and a chance to go 0-10 tomorrow against the Cavs. So the Knicks do have to win one of their last 2 games in order to not drop to the 4 seed to the Pacers. And that's assuming, of course, that the Pacers win out as well. But yeah, I thought I would mention that. And then I also very, very briefly went over Orlando securing the 7th spot. And I would not say that this was like the most accomplished season for Orlando. I think they did fall to expectations a little bit, but Paolo Banchero, who was having a rather inefficient season, at least returned from injury, who has recently, he just went on a 20 or 21 game, 20 point game streak that was just broken against the Celtics when they beat the Celtics yesterday. Yeah, hats off to Paolo and Orlando for trying to stay relevant out east. Good luck to y'all in the play-in. I don't have any doubts that you can beat either Atlanta or Chicago.
They got to get to the conference finals to be my preseason pick. Let's go.
Is that right? Oh, I forgot all about that. That's awful, man. That's awful.
I think it was even into the season, so that doesn't make it any better. But at least they didn't. They're in the playoffs, so that's a win.
I am curious to see. I would like to go back and actually listen to what were our thoughts were, if they were at all organized, because it was probably our first or second episode. But I would be curious to see what our thoughts were on the Sixers going into the season. I vaguely remember being a lot lower on it than everybody else. That was seen as the big offseason maneuver by the Sixers. Everybody was putting them up in top three in the East to start the season, and I thought even if Embiid had, played a decent chunk of the season, and Paul George had also played a decent chunk of the season, that they were going to be succumbing to injury quite a bit. But yeah, that was a very unexpected way for that season to end.
I saw some graphic that's was with the Carmelo going into the Basketball Hall of Fame, like who's played more games since 2016, and it was like Carmelo versus Embiid, and Carmelo had like 20 more games than Embiid. It was just like, Jesus.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I feel like I've been bagging on Embiid all season, so I would love to go back and see what my thoughts were on the 76ers. So yeah, that we'll have to find that. We'll do in the off season. We'll do some matchups and see how we did, and then have.
We'll go over some receipts.
Yeah, we'll check the receipts for sure.
There's gonna be some bad ones. There's gonna be some really bad takes, I'm sure. I'm pretty confident about my over unders though, and by over unders I mean all the overs that I took.
Yeah.
I honestly I don't remember how many it was, but I think I did well without looking at it. I haven't looked back at it at all, but I think I did
check the receipts, and we'll come up with a check the stats episode for sure. We haven't done this for a while, and I'm gonna just drop it just because it's out of the ordinary, and I'm just thinking about it. Here's your T4 trivia, brought to you by T4 Medical. So if you're in the East and you can't pick the Cavs or Boston, which team do you feel like you could trust the most? If you were to rank them in your own power rankings, how would you rank the Eastern Conference teams, not counting the Celtics, not counting the Cavs? How confident are you in the Pacers, in the Knicks? Like, is there the Bucks? Like, which one of those teams do you feel like you could ride?
So who else could come out of the East besides?
If you had to pick a team from the Knicks down to the Heat, they had to win a game to save your life, who are you picking?
Right now? Today?
Right now. Yeah, today.
So at this very moment in the season, not any other time in the season, this very moment in the season.
Right now, the
team
that is presented to you currently.
Really? I would pick the Indiana Pacers. Yeah. If you had asked me a few months ago, obviously I would have picked the Knicks. If you had asked me before we had played a single minute of basketball in the NBA, I think I would have picked the Knicks to win the championship. But watching it play out and just seeing, like, in spite of all the wing defense they have, just the amount of holes that they have on the defensive end, and then just how. I mean, I know I've said this already. It's like the ball can move real pretty sometimes, but it gets really stagnant in these like one-on-one matchups with the Knicks, and so they have a great offense, but how that translates to playoff or do or die. I mean, if it's a close game, I like picking Brunson, but all else aside, I think that this Pacers squad, and we've talked about it recently, who seemingly, if you don't have at least a double-digit lead on them with a minute left in the fourth quarter, you're going to lose that game, because somehow they're going to pull it off. They're going to, even if they're going to send it to overtime, or they're just going to win outright in regular time. And they're just kind of putting it all together. Halliburton's looking very confident right now. Kind of looks like the guy that we've been begging for since, where's the Tyrese Halliburton that started the first half of last season? Everybody keeps talking about this version of Tyrese Halliburton that seemed unstoppable, and I feel like we're just kind of seeing him really find his groove right now. And all the young wing players are. I mean, at any given moment, like between like Matherin, Nembhard, Naismith, it's like one of those guys is like really going to pop out at you for making a big play,
Mm-hmm.
especially in these clutch moments. Like everybody's just full grit right now, and yeah, watching them give full effort and actually play with some amount of like actual competency in these moments. It's like it's fun to watch. They're a really fun team to watch right now.
Interesting. I don't know if I was expecting that, but yeah, no,
I wasn't
I guess
expecting that
kind.
either.
No, I'm glad I was able to surprise you and at least get an honest answer out of you. So, no, thank you for participating in our trivia by T4 Medical.
The trivia question was, "What's my opinion on
Hey,
on
it's a
East?"
trivia. Like, no, it was a trivia of who would you pick? Like, who's your.
Yeah,
We can be whatever. It can be whatever we want.
it was
It can be
whatever it
the
wants to be. It's
T4
whatever it wants.
question of the night. Question of the night. Excuse me. I'll change the graphic. Let me get on that. I'm so sorry. Uh, do you have any other? I just gave you an Eastern Conference question. Is there any other team in the East that you would like to talk about? Do you think the Heat are going to have a chance if for whatever reason the team shuffle, if the Bulls manage to get up, could there be a matchup that ends up surprising people, that whether it's in the play-in or in the actual playoffs, that could surprise some people by just the way that the teams line up and just aren't a good fit against the other one?
Well, going off of what I just said, I've been trying to think to myself like who between assuming that the standings don't change right now, and let's pretend. I mean, honestly, we don't even have to decide who wins the play-in because I don't like anybody's chances against Cleveland or Boston. But a little bit further down the standings, I feel like it's going to be very interesting that 3-6 matchup and that 4-5 matchup. And I was asking myself, who feels like they're in a better spot? Milwaukee going up against Indiana or Detroit going up against the Knicks? And it's a tough one. Gosh, that is really tough. Who would you rather be playing in the first round between these top four seeds? I don't know if you have any thoughts as I'm pausing, bumbling in my head. You guys can't even hear. Just it's such a bumble that no noise is coming out of my mouth as I'm contemplating my own thought exercise.
No, as I'm sitting here thinking and I'm making a face at the camera, like that Pistons Knicks matchup to me, as I make a glitchy, if I'm glitching to you as I am to me, the Knicks and Pistons matchup to me is a super intriguing one. To me it seems, I feel like the Pacers Bucks would be kind of a slugfest. I feel like that one would have to go. What would that go 5? Is that what it is in the first round?
They're all seven. They're all 7 game
They're all
series.
7 now. Okay,
Yeah. It's not
I'm so old.
1996
It used to
anymore.
be. Yeah, they used to have. I feel like that's what baseball. Like now they're doing 3-game play-ins. I can't keep track of everything.
Yeah. Two old
So
dads ready for bed.
yeah, 2 old tired dads. Yeah, but I think, and again, it might be. I feel like I was high on the Knicks at the beginning of the season too, and not high enough on the Pistons. But and it's not just me wanting to give them extra flowers, but I to me it's this Pistons team. It's like, how long has this core been together versus the Knicks, and have they been tested and come up? And so I feel like we've expected all of this stuff from the Knicks, that they're supposed to do this. They're the team that's been kind of put together versus kind of like the throwaway scraps teams of the Pistons. And I think that dynamic will be a fun one to watch if that ends up being the matchup in the first round.
Yeah. Well, not accounting for injuries, the Pistons have beat the Knicks 3-1 on the season.
Ooh, there you go.
So that is very interesting. I'm just going to throw that out
Interesting.
there. That's
Very
very interesting.
So yeah, to me that it's just like they're a veteran team. And so yeah, to me that it gives them all of a chance because it just that they know the importance of every possession, and so it'll hopefully make it exciting. But like you mentioned too, if it was something where which one would I am more excited to watch, and to me the Pacers feel like whether it's what Halliburton doing the hard bounce pass and Obi Toppin keeps flying around like every other night. I feel like I'm seeing an Obi Toppin like alley oop highlight that's making like the top 10. And so they seem like a very fun team to watch. But yeah, you've got me convinced that the Pacers feel like they're a pretty fun team to watch. I'm excited to see if they can repeat what they did last year in the playoffs. And yeah, they're one of those intriguing teams to watch.
That's true. They were an Eastern Conference finalist. It's anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, we'll have to talk a little bit more about seedings and matchups and potential upsets once the dust is settled from the regular season and everything is, and the play-in for that matter, and everything is finalized. So I'm really excited for that. That might be the next time we chat with you guys. That's sad. It's all coming to an end.
Yeah, as I cough through the mic. No, so we're sitting here. It is Thursday night, very late. The Timberwolves they've got 2 minutes left. So, but yeah, tomorrow night, Friday, it is a packed night of games. It doesn't appear Saturday night, no teams are playing. And then the 13th, Sunday the 13th, is the last day of the regular season. So we say goodbye to the Jazz, to the Wizards, to the Hornets, the Sixers, the Nets, the Pelicans, the Spurs, the Blazers, and as of a few hours ago, the Phoenix Suns. We'll all say goodbye this season. And then, yeah, we're going to probably try to get an episode in as we do a live on air discussion, probably Sunday night, maybe Monday. And then the 15th is the first round of the play-in games. So I believe that's going to be the 7-8 matchups are first. And then the winner earns the 7 seed, which is on the 15th. The 16th is the loser gets eliminated. So the 9-10 matchup. And then on the 18th will be the winner will get the 8th seed. So, and all of those games, the East and West both play on the same day. So the 15th, so that is a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday slate of games next week before the actual playoffs get started. So that'll set the stage for you. It is late, and we are both going to go to sleep and or have a child wake us up in an hour or so. So yeah, any last thoughts as we head to bed and say goodnight to everybody?
Well, thanks again for joining us, folks. Appreciate our biggest fans out there. It's right now it's a big scary world, and we're still just talking about playing basketball. So we hope you keep tuning in and distract yourself from things that actually do matter. And give us.
This is all I know. There's other stuff going on. Like I just know basketball.
I've been told. I have been told.
Okay, good. That's all right. Word on the street. All right. Well, yeah. So we hope everybody out there enjoys your basketball. Make sure you guys comment, check us out. Obviously, we are heavy and we are focused on the YouTube family, but we are obviously out on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you're getting your social media. Come find us. We want to say hello. Come say hello to us. Until next time, this is the Bucket Bros. We'll see ya. Good night.
Ciao.